Hello everyone, how are we doing? So, this is my first video talking about the meta of Hearthstone, and I really wanted to gush about it. I've been wanting to play Hearthstone and stream it for a very long time. If you guys don't know, I am H. Sherlock, which basically is my Hearthstone name, and I've been playing Hearthstone for at least 12 years now. And this is my first. I've been contemplating on starting Hearthstone streaming for a very long time, and now the meta is finally there for me to start streaming. Because, yeah, we do have issues. Like, look at this. It's a druid, and we don't know where the other druid is. So yeah, it's Druidstone now. So Druidstone, especially if you see H's guru would basically tell you that Hearthstone right now is basically a Druid Stone because the top three decks, top four decks, along with top three is Druid. Now, do I have a problem with it? Yes. What problems do I have specifically? It's an aggro meta. Everyone's trying to beat Token Druid, and Token Druid is very fast. Token or Trin, I'm not exactly sure. But the one problem I do have is with Imbue Druid. Now, before I stop, before I start talking about Imbue Druid, I basically have to talk about the entire meta of itself. Because if you look at the meta itself, there are roughly, let's say, from even if you do consider the C tier, you have 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You basically have 12 ongoing archetypes that are vast, and almost every class is represented within the meta snapshot. So, so the idea of Druid dominating the meta is true, but however, the meta is doing all right. Now, if you're in top 1000 Legend, that's gonna suck because top 1000 Legend is just an entirely competitive meta, and Legend itself is a very competitive meta where people only seem to be playing Druid, which I've seen many of other streamers talk about. But if you're in the lower ranks, which if I suggest if you guys want to play casually and play for fun, stay in lower metas, even as low as Platinum, where I'm at right now. Platinum seems to be having a very diversified meta where people are playing basically everything. Is Druid completely absent? No, but does it have a 30% chance of beating Druid? Unlikely. If you'll see my stats on H's replay and my Hearthstone deck tracker, you'll see that yeah, there are Druids, but it's not as much as you think. So I've been having a very fun time because this is the time where I get to try out decks that I genuinely enjoy. And before, where it used to be the case of the past 2 years, the metas all were unstable in the sense that they were stable, but the play pattern was not fun. I seem to follow a lot of what Zeddy says, and but subconsciously and consciously, I feel like the meta that has been developing over the last 2 years before rotation, was not something I was particularly interested in. The playstyle and the play pattern where combo decks, where combos were achieved very easily, and aggro decks had cards that were easily accessible to all classes, and that would allow them to come back to the game, which isn't inherently the purpose of which isn't inherently a composition of Hearthstone, where aggro decks after they lose a board wouldn't be able to come back, but with the help of Ziliax, Elise, aggro decks were also able to come back from a defeated board state and would basically become like a control deck or a mid-range deck. And not to mention the easy combo decks that like used to stall, stall, and stall, and then just beat you out of nowhere with discover mechanics and insane power creeps. Now we have a meta where there's a combination of aggro and mid range and a combo. Yeah, control is missing, which I feel like after the first wave of nerfs to Druid, possibly even Hunter, I feel like the meta would come back to a place where the position of aggro, mid range, and control would all be in one place. And now seems to be the best time to get into the meta. You can see you can see most of the top being dominated by aggro decks. Herald Shaman, I wouldn't consider aggro, I would consider that mid range, the only mid range deck that's been able to keep up with other aggro decks because of its early game pressure. And the another thing which most people forget to mention in their suggestion videos or their nerf videos, I hate egg decks. Egg decks simply is not fun to face. Egg Warrior, I have yet to face it right now, but from HS replay stats from bronze to gold, it's apparently a very dominant deck. Now, I'm very happy not facing it. I'm not really a fan of egg decks. In fact, it's not just about the 2020 egg, it's also about the other egg cards that got introduced in the set, where eggs are I like eggs when they're a part of a sacrificial component, or if you could buff them and maybe get some upsides. But the upsides of the current metagame, if you consider that it's very easy for tokens or eggs to get attacks from things like for shaman, it's heralding, and from token druids, it's like buffing them. It's so easy to do right now that eggs feel like very dominant. I feel like they need to be scaled back. Other than that, I feel like this meta right now is not something to complain about. Druidstone isn't inherently a bad thing because it's not breaking the game. It's making the meta revolve around them, which is a bad thing temporarily, but I don't think it's a very bad thing. But I feel like for players that have been off of Hearthstone, come back to the game, it's really fun. But Imbue Druid is one thing I do have problems with. Imbue Druid basically takes everything that was there from previous expansions, makes it accessible for newer players, especially because of the free packs, the free access to the cards you get. But it's not something that would be helping the current meta to develop or the current expansion to come into the surface if this were to be a very prominent deck. So the problem is there. Now, how do you fix it? Imbue the hero power that Druid gets because of the imbue. Now, if you make it, you have to cast 3 nature spells, that would almost certainly kill the deck. You don't want to do that. Now, maybe you nerf a few key cards, like your Felwood Treant, and maybe even your Dreamer Discipline, where it's slower, but inherently the concept still stays the same. This is not a meta where you want to summon bigger and bigger creatures because your board isn't necessarily scaling. Even if you do bring back decks like Death Knight, Herald Death Knight, you would only be having powerful late game cards on the late game, and having an unlimited resource of summoning larger and larger men isn't necessarily a fun thing. Now, the only way to work around it is probably turn it into something like Rogue, or maybe even, uh, yeah, I would say something similar to Rogue where you'd be summoning spells. Now, with the nerf of current Druid cards, is it entirely possible that Imbue Druid goes down? I don't really think so, because you're not really tackling Imbue Druid. Imbue Druid needs a rework, and I don't know how they're gonna do it, but that was one of my suggestions, was to turn it into a hero power that gives you nature spells, or gives you choose one mechanics, or lets you choose between 2 spells or 3 spells, or maybe even discount them, which could be fine. But as for as for other problems that I really want to talk about is the egg itself. Now, Egg Warrior, the way egg decks play are basically a linear strategy. You bring on the egg, you damage it with Warlock, you get your Herald, which isn't doing particularly well. But I feel like if everything else gets toned down, that's going to come up to the meta and be something big. Egg being a win condition isn't a good thing when classes such as Warlock and Warrior have access to board clears that could affect your own minions and ways to damage or, like I said before, give attacks to your minions. Which I feel like the egg itself needs to be adjusted. Whether make it 4 mana, which still doesn't really make a difference, or make it summon more eggs so it takes more time so that it is inviable. Something like egg is very hard to beat when they're already having a board full of 2020s and there is literally no board clear in the game. So another one suggestion would be to basically turn it into something else. Make it a 10-10 egg. Maybe 10-10 eggs that summons after 3 eggs are cracked. Something along that line. Now, that's my honest opinion of what the meta is. The meta is really good. I don't see many egg decks, and even if you do, I really hope that egg deck gets tackled. And even if it doesn't, I really hope that it'll be fixed within the next balance patch after the next one. But for now, Hearthstone feels like a game that's worth a shot. If you guys were playing back in Kobolds and Catacombs, Scholarman's Academy, or even when I started playing properly was on Goro, if you guys want something of that meta, it's here. And I suggest you all give it a shot. That's it all from me. See you next time. And catch me on Twitch. The handles are down in the description below. See ya.